He was over, I don't know how many Satanists, call them churches. He was like the bishop.
You gotta be kidding me.
What was in her heart? You don't know what sin she committed. You don't know how much unbelief was there. You don't know whether she hated her husband.
I don't think so.
Why would anybody spend so much time ranting and raving about something that they don't believe in?
Really?
Welcome to Skeptics Brew Pub with Brother Brewer. And welcome to tonight's episode of Skeptics Brew Pub. This is episode 32, and I'm your host, Brother Brewer, and joining me tonight all the way from the great northern area of New York is Eli Bosnick. How you doing tonight, Eli?
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, hold on.
I'm good.
I'm not hearing you on my side. Let me bring this back up. Okay, try it again.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, brother.
Well, thanks for coming on. I've been a fan of you since you first came on since I first heard you on the Gamcast. I think you guys had reviewed the one that I heard. I think was the Kirk Cameron Christmas special, or the Kirk Cameron Christmas Saving Christmas.
Back when it was still on Scathing.
Yes. So tell me. I know I've got a bunch of questions for you because I've kind of been Facebook stalking you before you came on the show.
Lovely.
But what some of the things I wanted to know, how did you decide to get into the entertainment business? I mean, I know a lot of people have tried. I've got family members that have, and it's a really hard business. So what made you decide to give it a go?
Well, I wanted to be an actor ever since I was a little kid. I was literally 2, and I was in a school play, and I've never wanted to do anything except entertain people ever since. I did drama in middle school. I did drama in high school. I got a full international baccalaureate diploma in high school. I went to NYU for drama. I spent 4 years in the drama school, or 3 years in the drama school there. I graduated early, moved to London, did a little bit of studying in London, did a little acting in London. Took a job there. While I was in college, I got interested in magic, which was another way to entertain, and something that I still do on the side. And the job that I got while I was living in London is how I met Noah and Heath, who worked in the same sort of retail store that I worked in. And their company, every time someone would leave, would have a roast. And usually it was just a chance for people to go up and be like, "Hey, Jerry, you're fat. Yeah, fat Jerry, bye." But, Noah and Heath would do real roasts, and I would do real roasts. And so I think it was the 3rd or 4th episode ever of Scathing. They said, "Oh, you should come in, you should run for Pope," just as a joke. And so I came in and I ran for Pope against the current Pope, and unfortunately I lost.
No, I'm sorry to hear that. You probably would have done better.
Otherwise my podcast would have billions of listeners instead of the ones it does.
There we go. Sorry. I think you
and I get. Did you lose me?
Yeah, it kind of buffered for a second. I think that was my connection.
Oh, sorry. And I always loved terrible movies, and so I told Noah and Heath, "Oh, you got to watch this, you got to watch that." And then when God's Not Dead came out, I went and saw it anyways, just because I love terrible movies. And I was an atheist, and they said, "Oh, you got to come do a review of it." And it got a huge, very popular reaction. So we started doing it monthly, and we had done it monthly a little bit here and there. And then I lost the sort of survival job that I had gotten, that I had shared with Noah and Heath. And by this time, Noah and Heath were doing their show full time. And I just sort of said, "Guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the reviews as often. I got to get a survival job. I think I'm going to be an Uber driver." And, basically throwing out different things there. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Basically throwing out different options there. And Noah said, "Well, why don't we create the Patreon for GAM and see how it goes? Let's put it up for just the amount you need in rent. We'll just put up what you need in rent, and then everything else will be gravy." And we hit it in 24 hours. And since then, the show has just grown and grown and grown. So I feel incredibly, incredibly lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I love listening to the show. The movies that you roast, I was especially appreciative of the Batman versus Superman that you guys did on there. That was
the patron bonus episode. That's a lot of people became patrons for that. That was like their first intro to Patreon as a system, and it was a blast. And we do a secular movie once a month. So That's always some of the most fun in the job.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you guys that that atrocious thing that they were calling a movie was just beyond compare. It was
not good.
Yeah, I don't think that that director, his name, I'm purposely blocking out of my head, but I don't think he should direct Traffic, much less a movie. He's like the M. Night Shyamalan of DC movies. I mean, he did that one decent one with 300, and has just never hit it with anything else. It's just,
and since then, it's all been downhill from there.
Now, you said that you also do magic on the side, and I know I've seen you do a little bit of stand-up comedy as well. Which do you prefer?
Between magic and stand-up comedy, I liked doing stand-up better when I did it. It was much tougher. It paid way less, and it was a lot less fun climbing upwards. You know, when you're first starting out in magic and someone gives you $50 or $100 to do some card tricks for their friends at a party, it's kind of fun and exciting. And when you're first starting out in stand-up, you're doing open mics with other comedians who don't laugh and don't smile, and bringers and selling comedy tickets on the streets of New York. So I definitely enjoyed going into magic more than I enjoyed stand-up, but given my druthers, I'd always prefer stand-up over magic today.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there was, on your channel, you've got one thing where you're doing a little magic show with some mentalist type things, and I kind of enjoyed watching that.
It's from a fundraiser 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah, because my dad, among other things that he was doing to try to become famous, I guess he also did magic and such. So I kind of got to learn how some of the tricks worked, and I've got some favorites of my own. But what's out of the illusions and such that you know, what is your favorite?
Let's see. There's sort of a lot of think of a word tricks that I really enjoy, and there's one that I'm playing with lately that involves someone picking a word off of Wikipedia that has been a real favorite of mine that I've been doing just in social situations, that I've been doing, on the internet and wherever I get a chance to. It's sort of my go-to latest magic trick. So
okay.
It makes me very happy. I really enjoy it.
Oh, and I'm just wondering too. I know that you're using the pop filter to keep all of the P's and stuff off your mic, but there's actually video going on too, and you keep kind of hiding behind the the thing.
Sorry, we were just recording. I didn't realize we were doing video.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that when we got started. It's something
I would have dressed up.
I mean, here I'm wearing
very hobo.
I'm wearing my pajamas basically over here, so.
All right. Well, I will back up a bit to make myself slightly more visible.
Okay. Well, I have to admit that the outfit you're wearing right now, though, it does look better than from the pictures that I saw from the Gamcast that you guys did.
My wrestling outfit?
Yes.
My fantastic wrestling outfit? Yes. It's funny, I came out in my underwear at the first live show we ever did in New York, because I was just like, I came up to Noah right before the show, and I was like, it'd be really funny if I came out in my underwear, because, it's a recording, and the idea that, Eli doesn't understand that he's not supposed to, he's supposed to wear clothes when he records. And he was like, oh my gosh, we have to do it. And then I had this, people were like, oh, I can't wait to see what you come out in London. And so I came out in a chimney sweep outfit, and then I'd done it twice. And I had this funny idea because we had been on Tom and Cecil's show, and Cecil had Tom had talked about arm wrestling me. And I was like, it'd be really funny if I just took that super seriously and came out in just a ridiculous wrestling outfit. So now every time we do a live show, I got to figure out a new outfit to come out, and it's a lot of pressure.
You got to one-up yourself.
Exactly.
Oh, man. So before we get into asking you about a little bit about the podcasting, one thing I wanted to know from your professional opinion, which one's more evil, Chris Angel or David Blaine?
So I will say I've met David a couple of times. He is a total sweetheart. Chris is a famous prick. Everyone says it. So definitely Chris Angel. Yeah, I mean, audience members who meet him, fellow magicians who meet him. His new show is just an insane combination of him coming up and doing a bunch of tricks that he bought from other people. And then he tells everyone that his son has cancer and asks them to donate money. It's really, really weird. So yeah, definitely Chris.
Okay, yeah, I kind of had a similar opinion on him because I've seen some of his tricks, and it's not so much magic as it is just camera edit or TV editing.
Exactly, and when a non-magician can tell that, you know that he's doing a terrible job.
Yeah. So I know you said that you had met Noah and Heath when you were roasting at your former job. What was it that you were doing there? I mean, were you trying to sell magic tricks, or?
Yeah, I worked for a magic company there for a while, a company that was very good to me called Marvin's Magic. I worked for them for 7 years, and I was their basically their U.S. representative. I ran FAO Schwartz and Times Square Toys R Us in New York City for years and years. And the other two guys worked for a toy company there, but I was selling magic kits, and I was the head of the U.S. division of the demonstration team.
Oh, okay. Now, as far as your comedy goes, especially with the podcast, how would you describe it to other people if you were to try to ask or try to describe it to them?
The one sentence summary I have is the Comedy Central roast of Christian movies is the best way to put god awful movies, and then Scathing Atheist is morning radio, but the subject is religion and the language isn't clean.
Aha. Okay. Now, something that I want to personally ask, too, is a lot of the things that you do on Scathing, a lot of it comes off as very ad-lib. Are you just throwing stuff out there and riffing off of the guys, or do you have a script that you're...
We all work off a pretty strict script. It's funny. A lot of people, when they go into podcasting, start out and they're like, oh, man, when me and my buddy get together, it's a laugh a minute. We're so funny. And then they get on the air and they're just like, what's up? Did you fart? Right? And it's because you need a script, and we do riff on the script. We'll have moments where we go back and forth. We'll follow chains, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But we do have the show itself is pretty strictly scripted in what we're going to say. GAM is less so, but Scathing, for instance, is pretty strictly scripted in what we're going to say, when we're going to say it. And because we have that script as a core, we can go off on tangents. We can explore and play, and we have a language and a dialogue that allows us to do these things. The other thing is our dynamic. For more than a year now, we've been working together. And so we know each other's rhythms. We know each other what will set someone up. We know what someone is better at than doing. If there needs to be an angry rant, I'm usually going to tee that up for Noah, right? If there needs to be, just sort of like a sniper rifle, super smart, like joke or a pun for. And if they need someone to fuck a goat, that's my character on the show, right? And so one of the things that we've learned that I think really works for us and that listeners really seem to appreciate is that we understand what we're good at and we want the others to succeed. And that's part of a teamwork of what makes a great show, is that you're not just concerned about how do I get my laugh, but how do I get Heath a laugh? How do I get Noah a laugh, right?
Right. Okay. Are you looking forward to the next sequel coming up for God's Not Dead? Because it looks like David A.R. White has teed it up for a third one.
Oh, yes. Very much so. Can't wait.
Do you think he's going to bring back Kevin Sorbo, or?
No, I think Kevin Sorbo's dead, unfortunately. Maybe he'll bring him back as like a Jedi ghost, right?
No, that would be cool.
Like as they're burning the next bed. Yeah, exactly. He'll just be floating in the background, believing in Jesus.
I feel really bad for it because
one can hope.
Yeah, I really used to be a fan of Kevin Sorbo because he was such a cheesy actor, but then he started doing the Christian movies, and I can't watch him anymore. It was like,
yeah, he followed the market.
That he did, and it seems like they're making a killing off of those Christian movies too. It's just amazing.
They make a tremendous amount of money
and very low budget.
They have no more firm job security than Christian movies.
This is true. Now, along with with the David A.R. White movies, are there any other producers that you really love to hate watching for the show?
Ooh, Pure Flix, which is David R. White's company, is sort of the best. They're sort of the top of the chain. Kirk Cameron's pretty fantastic. I love all of Kirk's movies. They contain his particular brand of crazy. And then, of course, there's Ray Comfort, whose jump out interview, man on the street style is good. You don't want too much of it at once, but whenever I'm in a bad mood, I turn on a Ray Comfort movie and watch him asking some 19-year-old leading questions, and it gets me through the day. It's pretty fantastic.
Now, I was going to also ask you, how does Ray Comfort taste? I mean, does he taste like chicken? Is it more like a veal?
I have no idea what you're talking about. This terrible rumor that I would ever do such a thing. Upsetting.
Oh, man.
A man of dignity.
Yeah. So another side of you that I've seen on Facebook and also on other podcasts that you've been on, your activist side, where you're a lot more nuanced and seem to have a lot more patience than a lot of people. So what got you started being an activist?
Well, I guess I'm an activist in two ways. I'm an atheist activist first, obviously. My show is about atheism, and I believe that atheism is the cure for many, many of society's ills, and ones that even atheists most of the time aren't willing to talk about. And then I also talk a fair amount about social justice, and I talk a fair amount about social justice because I do come from a place of comedy, and it's where I see a problem in our community right now. I wish I could say that we had a really forward-thinking group of folks, but the truth is, as any internet troll will tell you, the only thing that unites atheists is that we all don't believe in God, or gods, as the case may be.
Yeah, pretty much.
And as a rich, white, male-dominated group of people, which we are, that's going to bring with it a certain amount of misogyny and a certain amount of conspiracy and a certain amount of bad thinking. And I try to push back against that because, the future of the secular community and the next big leap, I think, for us is going to be how welcoming can we become? When I talk to younger atheists, when I talk to people, when I speak at NYU, where I still go back to occasionally for the program that I used to be in, has me back occasionally, do like workshop things. When I speak to them, or when I speak to the SSA at NYU, or just younger atheists in general, one of the things that comes up a lot is when I speak to people of color or the LGBTQ community, they say, yes, I'm an atheist and I love the works of blah, 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 blah. But I would never identify as an atheist because of blank, right? And the truth of the matter is, when you YouTube atheist, you don't come up with the first 5 results are not people who are going to make an African-American or a person of color or an LGBTQ individual feel welcome. Reading on Twitter of some of the more sort of famous atheists, you're going to see them saying some things that are probably very discouraging for a younger generation. So whatever tiny niche of the community I fill, I want to make it feel open. I want to make it feel safe. And again, there's no holds barred in my comedy, obviously, but it is important to me that people know, even me, the dick joke guy, you're welcome here, right? You're welcome here. This is a safe place for you to be.
Ah, yes, the safe space.
No, not safe space. Okay. Safe place.
Okay.
Very different.
Yeah, I've kind of heard round and round on those arguments as well. Now, I know that, like I was saying, you are so nuanced and cordial in your discussions and in your Facebook talks, and I know that you've got this really sharp, biting wit. How do you keep from not tearing someone's head off in a debate?
Well, it depends. I've done some head tearing, which has been a certain amount of successful and a certain amount of not. When you have an audience, which a lot of the time when I'm doing a debate or even just having a conversation on Facebook, I do, or Twitter, when I know people are watching it, there's got to be a purpose. I might sit on my phone, I might sit at home and go like, oh, this fucking asshole, right? And I might want to just rip into someone. But if the better purpose is to be understanding, if the better purpose is to be a better conversationalist, then that's what I try to do. But there are also times, and people can look through, I did like Eli versus Rod, where I was just on a friend's Facebook and some guy was just doing a bunch of homophobic, transphobic stuff. And so I just ripped on him for 37 comments and then screen capped all of them and posted them so people could laugh at it. So there's good and there's bad. I do, especially now as my following has gotten larger and larger, I do have to be very careful. I black out. If I'm going to do a screenshot, I black out the person's name and profile picture. because that's something that has gotten, in my opinion, out of hand. This sort of group mentality. I'll have people, message me and say, oh, let's get them. And, I have to rein those things back. Even when I do debates with people who may or may not have large followings, I'll say, look, these people came, they were brave enough, they were nice enough to come out here and have this conversation. Let's be cordial, let's be civil. Because if I don't do that and I don't control my audience, I'm as bad as those people who I criticize in the community, right? And just because I think I'm doing it for my cause as opposed to theirs doesn't make it any better.
Right. So let me think on here some other things that I had questions about. I've just kind of lost track for a second. Now on what are the plans for the future as far as your podcasting and stuff goes? Are you planning on branching out any further? Or are you going to be teaming up with Thomas Smith?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I am going to vaguely look over here and I'm going to be very coquettish and I'm not going to answer your question is my answer to that. There are many exciting things in the offing for Puzzle and Thunderstorm Entertainment. And they're very exciting. And hopefully people like them a lot. But I shall not say.
Okay. Alrighty.
There are no answers.
There are no answers to that question. So, now, on your activism front, too, I mean, you were talking about not doxing, or at least not letting not showing profile pictures and stuff. I know that there's a lot of that goes on, and I sound like I'm getting an echo on my side over here. So, what would you, how am I going to put this? Is that something that you see is going to keep going on, get worse in the future, or do you think we're finally ever going to get a handle on it?
No, actually, I do think it's getting worse. I think it's getting much, much worse. I think the culture of the takedown video and the culture of the quote tweet have created this mob justice, hands-off sentiment on the internet generally. I don't think this is restricted to the secular community. I think this is just on the internet is now, if you have a large enough following, and I experienced this myself, there's a temptation at times to just let the listeners take care of it.
Let the fans take care of it. The truth
is,
if we announce
on Scathing, like, everyone go tell this person to go fuck themselves on Twitter, they'll get tens of thousands, if not more, people just going after them. Right, because we asked them to, and they like our show. And you see this happen with YouTubers all the time. They'll make quote-unquote takedown videos of someone, and that person gets rape threats. What I don't understand is how you can be a person who creates an environment where those things happen and then, live with yourself and not make major changes. I always think it's funny. People are always – I'll criticize a YouTuber, and they'll go, well, they've got a pretty big following, and they can't control their followers and blah, blah, blah. And then I'll look, and they have less subscribers to their YouTube channel than I get in a single week of downloads on podcasts. And I'm like, it's funny. We've been doing this. Noah and Heath have been doing this for a while. I've been doing it for almost a year. I've never made anyone a rape threat. I don't know why people feel like, oh, it's not my fault. I can't do anything about it. Of course you can control your listeners. If that ever happened, I would absolutely, in every way, even when people tag, people like apologists and stuff in tweets. If it's an abusive tweet, I'll say, hey, don't tag them in this, right? If you want to call Ray Comfort a hair covered sack of shit and not tag him in it, fine. He doesn't see it. It's not a part of his life. If he Googles himself, that's him looking for trouble. But if you're tagging him to insult him, you're bringing that to his door. He didn't ask for that. Right. And no matter how little I like a person, I don't think they deserve that kind of treatment.
You see, that's something that I really don't understand, too, is this idea of the rape threat or, things of that nature, because that is, that's something that you just, at least I was brought up, you don't even joke about something like that. It's just, so I guess I have a hard time understanding how someone could do that. What kind of a person could make that kind of a threat, even if they're an internet troll in the basement that's just not going to do anything about it, that they would just even think of making that kind of a threat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually don't think it's the troll, and I don't think it's a specific kind of person. I think it's there's an incredible set of videos called Innuendo Studios, by Innuendo Studios, called "Why Are You So Angry?" And they're about the Gamergate controversy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not actually about the Gamergate controversy. What they're about is they're about how normal people empower truly evil people. And Gamergate is a really great example of that. If you talk to 99.99% of Gamergaters, right, they're just conspiracy theorists, plain and simple. They're just conspiracy theorists, and they don't like the evidence because I love video games. I grew up with video games. I still play video games. I own one of every system pretty much ever made, with a couple of exceptions. But I own one of every commonly available system ever made, and I've still got them. I still play quite a bit. And I think Gamergate and Sarkeesian and feminist frequency was, for the first time, a lot of people hearing their favorite thing in the world had problems. And the problem is, when people hear your favorite thing in the world has problems, what they hear is, you are broken. You're a bad person, right? Good people do good things. Bad people do bad things. And if you're doing bad things, you must be a bad person. And so rather than accept that and say, wow, yeah, maybe there are some problems with my video games. Maybe video games are sexist. Maybe some of the leaders in atheism shouldn't be saying these things. They double down and they say, no, this can't be true. These people must be liars, because if they're not liars, I'm a bad person. And which is why, you can go point by point and get rid of every point people have against Sarkeesian. And it's the same, and they just shrug. They just find a new one. There's always a new thing that comes up. I recommend those videos. I'm not doing them justice, but Why Are You So Angry by Innuendo Studios. They're really incredible. And I think they reach to the heart of what bolsters those troll communities. Because you and me, right, we would never send a rape threat. We would never even probably send too harsh an insult to a stranger, right?
Probably not.
But we do wish Kevin Sorbo would shut the fuck up. So if we're all group tweeting at Kevin Sorbo, right, and one of us who's less nice, has less self-control, says, I hope you kill yourself, Kevin Sorbo, shut the fuck up. And we don't go, I hope you kill yourself, because that's a horrible thing to say. And if someone says, oh my gosh, you guys are telling me to kill myself, we go, no, I just want you to shut the fuck up. I just don't like it. I'm not that guy. And that guy uses the fact that he blends into the crowd of you and me to get away with that stuff, because he just disappears back into the crowd and says, no, we just want you to shut the fuck up.
Okay. Yeah. Along with those, I mean, a lot of the prominent atheists, I think they've gotten some heat, like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. I think one thing that they don't understand, at least with Dawkins, is that he's an old British guy. He's going to have some pretty crappy opinions about a lot of things, but just because he has crappy ideas on this end, that doesn't discount what he's done for atheism on the other side. That doesn't mean also
Absolutely.
that, and that doesn't mean that we condone when he does something bad, but we don't completely discount him too.
Right, and you can separate the two. Is something. The God Delusion is not a worse book because Richard Dawkins didn't understand why a YouTube video was a bad thing to share on Twitter, right? And again, people idolize people and they're not willing to hear any criticism, right? I love Dawkins, and maybe I shared some of those thoughts that he posted on Twitter, and people are reacting. People are kicking him out of a conference. They're uninviting him, and well, if they uninvite him, that means that I'm not welcome. And if I'm not welcome, then that means I must be a bad person. It gets back to that idea of, funny as it is, because atheists, for the most part, unless you were raised an atheist, it means that at one point you were wrong about something pretty major in your life, right? And we're all willing to admit that. There's no better way to get a bunch of atheists laughing and talking to go, so what was it like when you were a Christian, right? And atheists will be like, oh, let me tell you about my church group. Like, I was knocking on doors and I shed a tear for Jesus. Like, they'll happily tell you about this time they were totally wrong. And then you'll go, yeah, but I mean, shouldn't we be nicer to trans kids? And they're like, well, now, wait a second. I don't really know about the whole psychological community. And, the conspiracy theorist just pops out of otherwise very rational people. And that can be a bummer. When it comes to Sam, I have a much different relationship towards Sam. Sam's got a baby. Now, Sam's got a daughter. She's actually not a baby anymore. But Sam's got a daughter, and Sam spent more time than pretty much any other horseman being attacked and being called by the left way before any of this became subtle. You know, he just dealt with everyone saying Islamophobe, Islamophobe, Islamophobe for years and years. And I think that pushed him into a circle of people who didn't believe Islamophobia existed. Right. And those are the same people that also don't believe in rape culture, that also don't believe in a variety of social justice ideas. And I don't think he's gotten a chance to talk to anyone he disagrees with of merit about those ideas in a very long time. And I think it's going to be very hard for our side, the social justice side, to win him back over, because so much of his life has been seeing people attack him and endangering his family, literally endangering his family because of those attacks.
Right.
And I think he was pushed on like Dawkins or even Hitch, who, you know, as much as I love Hitch and atheists love to sort of canonize him, if you will.
Well, yeah.
Hitch gave us Women Aren't Funny. You know, Hitch loved the Iraq War. There were problems with Hitch, and he probably wouldn't be the most social justice positive person today. You know, I don't think he'd take videos. I don't think he'd be making bigger jokes, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned canonizing Christopher Hitchens, because actually on one of the things that I do here is I have the Order of St. Hitchens, which is the oh shit. Because you'll have like if you have like the Order of St. Benedict calls themselves the OSB, so we're the Order of St. Hitchens, the oh shit. And I am its first founding member.
I love it.
But along those lines too, how much of this do you think also comes from the fact that we've come into a culture where nuanced language is kind of moving to the back, because you've got Twitter that only puts you to 144 characters, and it's really hard to get nuanced communication out in such a small medium. How much do you think that that's played into this?
Absolutely. It's not just that, but the internet steals your humanity. You know, it steals the social cues. It steals your ability to talk about people while they're there. You know, when someone's looking you in the eye, the way you interact, the way you talk is just vastly different than the internet. You know, fuck you if I was there, blah, blah, blah. And it's just everybody's, and I include myself in this because I find myself falling into it. Everybody's an internet tough guy. Mm-hmm. I've never had a conversation as mean or as angry as I've had on Twitter. And it's because they're not sitting there. You know, I've argued passionately for hours with people I know and people I don't in person, and had a blast doing it, because we both recognize the other person there is a human being with wants and needs. And it's the Louis C.K. bit, right? Louis C.K. has that great bit. He's like, when you say a mean thing, you see them feel that pain, but when you text it to them, you don't, and all you feel is good from having said the mean thing. And that's what the internet's done. It's put up this wall which still lets all the pain through and doesn't allow any of your humanity out.
Right.
And there are good sides to the internet too, but largely a combination of the anonymity of the internet and the fact that that wall is there has taken a lot away from our interactions.
Okay. Do you think that also may have something to do with why Trump was able to, and his ilk? Because, I mean, I've seen it building over the last 8 years of this steady, as we've become a more, well, less nuanced, but also more partisan. Do you think that the internet and, as you were saying, that whole separation, do you think that's had a lot to do with what happened with that? Because it seemed like that came out of total left field.
Yeah, there's so many factors that combine to create Trump that it's hard to talk about just one. The prevalence of the internet on the one hand, the election of a black president on the other, the weak campaign run by the Democrats, the fact that liberals for the most part didn't show up, the failure of third-party voters to learn from the mistakes made in voting for Nader in 2000, the creation of a new generation, a generation that did not lose its children in war, and therefore the sort of making of a grand military fantasy. In many ways, these factors all sort of combined, as well as the prevalent our civil rights movement, unfortunately, will not be as obvious as Selma. Selma was an event, and we want these rights and we want these laws to end, but our civil rights movement, the civil rights movement of our generation, will be cloaked in the slightly intelligent language of free speech. They're people who are defending and fighting the social progress of today have learned. The Nazis are in suits. They don't have shaved heads anymore. They're Richard Spencer. They're on forums. They understand, and they're organized, and they're smart, and they're educated in a way that they weren't in previous generations. And the voiceless are still very easy to trick. The poor, the underprivileged are very easy to trick. And this is something that Peter Coffin, who's a YouTube creator who I really like, has talked about quite a bit, is this huge con that the best way to get poor white people not to fight against their actual problem, which is rich white people, is to have them blame black people. Right? It's just a big con, and it's too hard to explain how it's a con for it to work. Right? For you to reverse it, right? If they're playing the 3-card money, right, you can be like, oh, no, man, the guy switches the card, right? And they'll go, oh, okay, I know why I shouldn't be conned by that anymore. But if they're talking about black-on-black crime and, colleges and social justice, and silencing free speech, and Obamacare being so expensive, and Democrats destroying the coal, that's all. Those lies are so convoluted and so complicated that there's not a simple one-sentence way they're not true. I was talking to someone today on the internet about the ACA and the coming repeal of the ACA, and she comes on and she says, well, I don't understand why I should have to pay for someone else's health care. And, I had 50 people on the thread trying to explain to her, and truly she ended up saying, look, everyone's going to die eventually. I don't see why I should have to pay for other people's things. Right. And that's sort of a convolution of things. Right. This is someone who lacks the education, lacks the empathy, lacks the ability to understand what they're saying. Mm-hmm. But they can understand the line that Trump pitched, and they understand the line of, why should you pay for someone else to have a thing? They understand that they don't see money in their pocket. They want that money to be in their pocket. And to break the con is harder than it up.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, another thing a lot of the things that Trump was saying and that people are throwing out that we would see in the elections, this is stuff that I grew up around, because I'm from here I grew up in north central Arkansas, which is probably the whitest place in the country, or at least it was when I was growing up. We had our current governor, who was attorney general back in the 80s, went in Waco style and took out a white supremacist neo-Nazi military camp that was just across the creek from where I lived at. So I've been hearing a lot of this stuff, and for the life of me, it never made sense. But I can understand where they're coming from on one side, because a lot of people that I grew up around were so dirt poor. My stepmom's parents didn't have running water until the family got together and finally bought them a trailer with running water. I mean, these were, they really wasn't anywhere to go. And so I can understand on their side of it, they want somebody to blame, but it's like they're focusing that blame on the wrong people.
Right, but that's because it's great money to get them to focus it on black people, on Jews, on gays, on trans people, right? Those are easy targets that are easily othered. You know who to look for? Look for the people with dark skin. It's a lot harder to explain to people about housing margins, right? Mm-hmm. Or poison water, or Reagan trickle economics, right? We're never going to get someone whose house doesn't have running water. It's just they're never going to get that and go, oh, okay, I understand how I'm being fucked over by the 1% now. But you can the blacks are all taking all the Social Security, and that means there's not enough money. Or the Democrats ended all the coal mining, and everyone would have great jobs if they didn't insist on their fancy electric cars. You know, and this is what's so funny is, you know, Hillary gave an honest answer to the coal question in the debates. It's something that the Democrats and liberals didn't pay attention to at all. Is that they asked her what she was going to do to bring back coal, and she was like, oh, coal's not coming back. And it's not. It can't come back. It just can't. The technology no longer, we don't use it anymore. We don't need it anymore. But if you're a coal miner in the states that she lost, that she thought she was going to win, and one side of the stage, which you're not super educated about, says the jobs are coming back, you're going to walk into a 6-figure job out of high school, you're going to feed your kids, you're going to send them to college, you're going to make their lives better than yours. And one side of the stage just sort of shrugs and says, we're not doing that anymore. You don't really care what that guy says. You don't really care what that guy did to a bunch of supermodels. You know, you'll find a way to justify it in your head. And so it becomes this complicated story of people's own interests, people's own life commitments getting in the way. Again, it's that idea of, you know, look, all Trump supporters aren't racists, right? They didn't go, I'm going to do this because I hate women, or do this because I hate black people. But they cared more about another thing, you know, and that's important to recognize so that we're not letting them off the hook, right? It's not that they didn't, some of them really didn't understand. I mean, you're hearing these heartbreaking stories of people who voted for Trump, who are on ACA, who need their pre-existing conditions covered, who need their 26 and under conditions covered. And my heart goes out to them. The veterans, you know, my heart goes out to them. It does. They don't know any better, right? But at the same time, I think that brings the responsibility more on us to educate. You know, that really becomes the core of it.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, it also feels like, at least when I talk to people around here, that you're beating your head against a wall. I mean, because I can remember going through during the elections and having somebody say, yes, I'm voting for Trump, and let me tell you why. And everything that they said is like, no, that's not, you're not even, you know, this is what the situation is. And like, well, no, that's just liberal hogwash. We don't want to hear that. You know, Trump is good because Bill Clinton was this and that and that. And it's like, well, Bill's not running. You know,
right. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a huge problem. The good news is that the younger generation is incredibly progressive. You know, Hillary, I think, would have won every single state if only people, you know, between the ages of 21 and 30 had voted. I think she wins every single state, even though she's probably kind of technically won anyways by any other system. You know, it is getting better. You know, people want to know why it didn't happen this year. Well, it didn't happen because too many people voted third party and not enough people voted Democrat. And there's only so many times I can explain that. And, you know, before we point the finger too hard at the right, I find myself saying the incredibly obvious statement about the problem of voting third party in Florida and Pennsylvania. And people go like, yeah, but if more people had voted for Hillary, then my vote wouldn't have mattered. You know, and I've truly had that argument dozens of times. And like, I don't know what your following is, but if your following is large enough, I guarantee you in the comments right now, someone is making the like, here's what Eli doesn't understand about the third party. And I'm sorry I wasn't willing to vote for Hillary, who was going to start a war in Syria and then set fire to my dad because my dad is made out of oil. Like it's not just the right. There is a huge subsection of our population that is no longer ashamed of a lack of education, who no longer think that's a factor, and because we've lost faith in authority. You know, and that's not just the right. That's everybody. You know, I say all the time, I say, not just what would change your mind, but I say, what level of expertise and in what subject would you defer to? And it's amazing what you hear. I'll talk to people about trans rights issues, for instance, and they'll say, "Oh, I don't think that's real. I think there's two genders." And I'll say, "Okay, well, here's the DSM-5, and you can see that they disagree with you." And they'll go, "I'm not sure about the psychological field. It's not a hard science." And I'm like, "Dude, you are a engineer in Bayonne, New Jersey. Why are you arguing with all the psychologists?" Right? And people all the time go, "Well, just because I don't know doesn't mean my opinion isn't valid." Why? When we became a generation that is entitled to its opinion, and I don't know who told us we were or why, but we're not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and people are calling it Trump's America, but I mean, we were sowing the seeds before that of just facts don't matter, or evidence doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter, and that's a thread that I think has been common through the U.S. throughout its history, is that we're always the rebel, and we've always been bucking authority. I mean, that's just ever since they threw tea in the Boston Harbor. That's the history of this country, and so when you try to bring up authority, it's ingrained in us. The first thing to do is just kick against it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to fix that either. I mean, education, and I don't see it getting any better if this Nancy DeVos, whatever her name is, Miss Amway, becomes Secretary of Education. I really don't see it getting any better.
Yeah, I mean, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I stay positive because I have to. I do good because I have to. Despair is not useful. I work and think and live in terms of it's going to get better and what can I do to make it better. Because if I don't think that way, all that's left for me is despair. And when you're lucky enough and white enough and rich enough in my situation to where despair just means you let everyone else get borked until it gets fixed, then that's a really selfish action to take, and I don't allow myself to do it. But I certainly feel it.
Okay. Well,
I feel that despair. When I.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
When I hear. No. When I hear people talking about, call your congressman, call your senator, stuff like that, it's easy to go, why? Why? If they gave a fuck about you, they wouldn't vote the way they did. You think 100 messages on Paul Ryan's machine are going to change his mind? You think 1,000 are? I'll tell you, as someone who gets 100 messages a day about how I shouldn't make, not 100 messages a day, but I've gotten more than 100 messages about how I shouldn't make fun of the Bible or I shouldn't make fun of religious people, hasn't affected me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy to despair in that sense and to say to yourself, I don't really understand or see what it is about this that I was supposed to care about, that I'm supposed to think is going to affect these leaders, because these leaders have a vested interest, especially when the generation telling me to call them couldn't be bothered to vote. Right. When the generation taking to the streets couldn't get down to the polling place. And I don't care if you were in California, I don't care if you were in New York, 3 million votes is one thing, 10 million is quite another. There were lots and lots of people who could have voted this election that didn't. There were people who could have voted in states that ended up mattering that didn't, because my state always goes blue. And my hope is that this most recent election will be a wake-up call for our generation, and we will see in 2 years a changing of the guard. If we just see a bright blue Senate and House,
let's hope
in 2 years, fingers crossed, then we can reverse, hopefully, or undo some of the damage that Trump is going to do. And I do hope it is minimal. There's a mean part of me that hopes it's huge, right? There's a mean part of me that sees those ACA stories about the Trump supporters, and there's a mean, ugly part of me that goes, oh, good, right? Like, that'll teach him. But the truth is, it won't teach them. They didn't learn, right? It won't teach them. They'll just be poor and sad and need more help and be more easy to con from the next person that comes along, right? If we learned anything from World War II, it's that punishing people who have made bad decisions makes them largely worse.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much what led to World War II. I mean,
exactly.
When you look at it. And I think that's probably going to be about all the time that we've got here, unfortunately, because it looks like we're getting close to that hour mark. But I do want to thank you again for coming on. It's been a really great conversation, especially here at this last part, because it's one of my passions is try to change people's minds, but also to try to kind of work together with groups. And that was one thing I was going to ask you, because I know that on Scathing Atheist and on the GAM that you're really hard on religion and on Christians, but there is a small subset, and I do stress a small part of Christianity that socially is going after the same things that we are. Do you think that it's possible for us to work with those more liberal groups, at least in the short term, to try to hold the line on the LGBT equality, on civil rights, on women's rights, and all of this, or is this just kind of a pipe dream?
I have to admit that I think it's a pipe dream, and I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that those liberal Christians, those liberal Muslims, those liberal Jews are empowering the conservatives in their midst. Roy Moore and Mike Pence and the monsters have the support they do because they say X amount of the country is Christian. And as has been pointed out by David Silverman, a far, far smaller percentage of this country is Christian than most Christian politicians believe and behave. And while I certainly understand the desire for community, understand the desire for identity, I think when we say, you're not that kind of Christian, you're on our side, we let them empower people who are not. I have yet to find a church, with pretty rare exception, I have yet to find many churches that when you dig down on their deeply progressive and great values that we share, you don't find a bigot 1 or 2 levels up. I know lots of great Catholic churches. I live in New York City. Catholic Church is the number 1 landowner in New York. The next is New York University. And lots of Catholic churches do great work here. But the fact is, $1 you spend on a fundraiser at a Catholic church in New York, a penny of a penny of a penny of a tiny percentage of that does go to covering up the rape and torture of children, right? No matter how great Monsignor Smith is, you do have to understand that those systems are in place for a reason. And while I agree that there are certain progressive Christians who we might agree on a subject with, there will always come a time where their values will butt up against ours. And they need to come to us, because you can't build a relationship on a foundation that is false. And the foundation that is false in their case is a lie, right? Is something fake, right? Even if they have put a woo-woo title around it, if you're calling yourself a Christian, you have a set of bad ideas that we cannot build mutual values on. And we can certainly work together, as you said, in the short term. But to ally with them is to sometimes, in my opinion, be incautious about which groups we throw our support behind, our money behind, and our time behind, because there's always someone, there's often someone at the top of that who's using it against those works.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good point too, and it's something that I'm going to have to think on definitely, because that's one thing that I've been wondering. I mean, because quite frankly, you were talking about feeling despair and desperation. That's a lot of what I'm feeling, despair, because it feels like the best that we're going to be able to do for at least the short term 2 years is hold the line. I mean, we're not going to make any more advances.
Well, I deeply disagree with that, because the local governmental level is still open to us. The charity level is still open to us. And, the despair is a useless emotion. We were very lucky this year. We did Vulgarity for Charity. We raised $25,000 for Modest Needs. And Modest Needs is just the perfect example of an apolitical, nonpartisan, just charity, and people can look it up. But essentially what it is it's GoFundMe, except they vet everyone who applies for the money, and they all with their creditors, so they make sure the money goes right towards the thing they're raising the money for. And we managed to raise $25,000 for them and help them fulfill some accounts and pay some people's bills and help some people out and, do some real good. And the truth is, the ability to do good, my wife and I do a fair amount of independent volunteering as well here in New York, but we do it on our own. And the truth is, the good that you can make in your own community and in your own life and in the life of the people you love hasn't gone away. In fact, it's probably the opportunity has risen. It's so funny. I get the I'm despairing. How do you wake up in the morning? How do you keep it up? How do you still make comedy messages pretty frequently? And the answer I always have is, how are you doing? And people will go, well, I'm really not great. I'm really unhappy and I'm really feeling sick and I don't like this and I'm unhappy. And I'll go, okay, well, how about you? How about you spend some time on you? And if they're okay, I'll say, okay, how's your family? How's your friends? And they'll say, oh, my buddy Bill really needs a job. All right, let's get Bill a job. Right? These tiny changes we can make. It's that it's falsely attributed to Gandhi quite a bit, but it was like when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I learned I could not change the world, so I dedicated myself to change my nation. I knew I could not change my nation. I dedicated myself to changing my city. I could not change my city, so I wanted to change my family. So I changed myself. And when I changed myself, I changed my family. And when I changed my family, I changed my village. When I changed my village, I changed my land. And when I changed my land, I changed the world. And I really think that's the antidote to despair is, what are we doing in the micro that's going to come and affect the macro?
Okay. Yeah, and that really does make sense too. But again, it looks like I'm going to have to cut us a little bit short here. But thank you very much for coming on. I know that you're really busy. You just got back from Chicago.
Yes, indeed.
Enjoying the Chicago style pizza.
Yes. Well, not me, but the other two did.
Yeah, and
awesome.
So hopefully I can't wait for the GAM episode to drop from the Chicago show. Is that coming up this Tuesday?
Yep, coming out tomorrow.
Okay. And if people are looking to hear more from you, where can they tune in?
They can check me out on Scathing Atheist, God Awful Movies, and the Skepticrat. That's on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever else podcasts live. They can follow me on Twitter at Eli Bosnick. That's ELIB as in boy, O, S as in Sam, N as in Nancy, ICK, all one word on Twitter. They can check us out on patreon.com/atheist and patreon.com/God Awful Movies.
Okay. Well, thanks very much again for coming on. It's been a real hoot talking to you. I hope I have not fanboyed too much, because I have been a really big fan of your work. So hopefully have a good night and a good week, and I'll be listening tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Talk later.
Have a good one.
Yep.
All right.
And I think we're off. Okay. So that was my conversation with Eli Bosnick tonight. It was really fun to have him on. We had a really good time, and I'm hoping to hear from him some more tomorrow, on God Awful Movies, and Thursday. Now I'm totally off script. I'm still fanboying. I'm sorry. But yeah, he's going to be on Thursday. The Scathing Atheist will drop. If you want to continue to hear more interviews like this, of course, you can tune into my show Monday nights at 8:30 Central Time on Spreaker. If you don't want to go to Spreaker.com, you can always go to my website, skepticsbrewpub.com, where the Spreaker live feed will be on the homepage. If you want to help keep the show going, of course, you can go to patreon.com/skepticsbrewpub and make a per episode donation, which will also get you into the Order of St. Hitchens that I was talking about with Eli, or the Oh Shit. That is, of course, our little irreligious order that I've created. And each level, of course, you will get notified on the about your Patreonship on the podcast, and you will also get at certain levels a certificate and a business card saying that you are a certified member of the Oh Shit, and that you are also either a patron, a certified lush, or an official barfly. And that's all the time that we've got tonight. So I will catch you on the flip side. And I almost forgot. This week, we've got to go through the Bozo of the week. And for this week's Bozo, we are going to nominate and award it to the Arkansas legislature. And why am I doing that? Because today here in Arkansas is not only Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but it is also General Robert E. Lee Day. This is one of the states that back at the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement decided to throw in the Martin Luther King Jr. Along with the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, they threw in the Robert E. Lee Day just to stick their finger in the nose of black folks everywhere and to the government. And even after, what is it now, going on 60 years now, 50, we still are fighting the battle to try to get the two holidays separated. And it's just not happened because our legislature has just not wanted to budge on it for whatever reason. I think maybe they're afraid that there's still too many racist rednecks around here. But in any case, they are this week's Bozo, and of course they get the Bozo Button Award. And I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. So hopefully we'll get to do this again next week and next week's interview. And so we'll see you then. Have a good night. Of course, never have a serious conversation without a 2-drink minimum. Good night, guys.
Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee. A few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be. When this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine